Hello guys, how are we all doing? Welcome back to yet another video. Now today, because we've hit the second international break of the season already and we're 11 games into the new season, I thought we'd stop and rank each championship team's start to the new season. Just before we get into today's video guys, you know the drill, hit the thumbs up button. If you're new around here, hit the red subscribe button and let's break this video down. So as you can see, we're using yet another tier list. I've split this into 5 sections: class, good, decent, underachieved, and shambles. And at the bottom you can see all of the championship badges scattered across as we're going to put each of these teams into this tier list. Let's get started with the first team then, which is Blackpool FC, who've obviously come up from League One and at the moment are doing the best out of the newly promoted teams. They're actually doing really well. They started a bit slow, they didn't win any of their first 3 or 4 games, and now they've hit their stride and they're winning quite decent games. They won at home to Fulham, they've obviously beaten Blackburn, they won away at Middlesbrough. They're picking up decent results, and coming into this international break, I didn't think they'd be in the top half, but they are. And you've got to say, Blackpool, it's been a good start. The same can't be said for the next team, which is Cardiff City, who've been very poor recently. They started okay, they've picked up a couple of points, but in their last 5 games, they've picked up nothing. 5 defeats in a row sees them dangling just above the relegation zone, down in 19th or 20th place next to Swansea City. And yeah, the current form and league position, considering where most people did predict them to finish this season, I'm actually going to say it's a shambles. It's even worse than underachieving. Cardiff City as a club shouldn't be down there, but they are. The big question is Mick McCarthy going to go? We'll find out over the international break. Next up, our top of the league, AFC Bournemouth, and there's no reason why they can't be in class. Obviously, they're expected to do well, but they are doing well, so they have to go in class. They're still unbeaten, the only team unbeaten in the championship so far this season after West Bromwich Albion lost to Stoke just before the international break. And yeah, Bournemouth really stretching their legs at the top. If they can keep this run going, then they could really open up a gap between them and the teams in 2nd and 3rd, and I really do think Bournemouth will get automatically promoted this year. Next up are Hull City, who've been a bit inconsistent. It's hard to place them on this tier list. They obviously won on the opening day 4-1 at Preston and everyone was getting excited about Hull. Then they went on a terrible run where they didn't win for ages, and they did sneak in a 2-0 win against Middlesbrough just before the international break. A really good result, that one. In between those wins, they've had a couple of draws, a 0-0 against Bournemouth probably being the best one. And it's hard with Hull City. Obviously, they've only just come up. I think if they hadn't have won that last game, I might have gone with shambles, but I'm just going to sneak them into underachieved. I think Hull City, on their day, are decent, and they could do better than what they're doing at the moment. Next up are the Blues, Birmingham City, and they did get off to a really good start, but each week they're just moving further down the table, and for that I think they're moving further down the tier list. After a couple of games I might have gone for class or good, then they started losing and I might have gone for decent, and they just keep losing, and a 3-0 defeat for Forest sees them down in 16th. I'm going to say underachieved for Birmingham, which is not what I expected after the last international break when Birmingham were looking alright. They've had some really bad results and they just don't look like winning at the moment, so I'm going to say they're underachieving. Next up are Blackburn Rovers, and a very inconsistent team. Their next game is against my team Coventry, and I really don't know what to predict for that one after the international break because Blackburn are so hit and miss. They blow hot, they blow cold, but ultimately it's still been a pretty decent start, and if they can just keep chucking in the wins even with a couple of defeats here and there, they'll stay in that top half. And yeah, you've got to say by Blackburn standards, I'd say it's been a good start to the season. The same can be said for Bristol City actually. I think they've really surprised me. I didn't know what to expect after how they ended last season terribly, and I wasn't sure about Nigel Pearson, but a few games in, they weren't doing amazing, but I think the form recently has picked up, and I think Bristol City, for me, they're actually looking alright. They've been grinding out some good results, and I'm going to say, yeah, a good start from Bristol City. Next up is my team, Coventry City, and I know I'm not being biased by doing this because it really has been a class start from Coventry City. Honestly, we are blowing everyone's expectations. Some people were saying Coventry could get mid-table, and that did sound a little bit optimistic after the way we were last season. We were in a relegation battle for most of the year, but we've really kicked on this season. That home form is second to none. 6 wins from 6. No one else can claim that they've done that in the Championship so far this season, and Coventry are flying. If we fix the away form, I really do think we could be up there this season. But for now, I'm more than happy with our home form, and I'm going to put us in class. Next up are Barnsley FC, and after a really good season where they overachieved last year, I think they're doing worse than underachieving this year. In fact, I'm going to say it's been a shambles from Barnsley Football Club. Obviously, it was a big summer with a lot of changes in the managerial department and in the player department, but really, they've been terrible so far this season. Only picking up 1 win, which was against my team Coventry, in a game where I really think we should have won that one, but fair enough, Barnsley did grind out the win. And just don't look very good. The results aren't going their way. They did lose in the last minute against Millwall just before the international break, and they really need a big turnaround because they really could get relegated if they carry this on. Next up are Huddersfield Town, and I would say they're kind of overachieving based on the last couple of seasons where they've been down in the bottom half, and obviously their fans will hope this continues because they're really flirting with the playoffs, and who knows, just keep winning the odd game and they'll be in the mix. And yeah, they've been playing all right. A couple of good players to keep your eye on, and Huddersfield could be up there this season. Next up are Luton Town, and probably the hardest team to say anything about because they've won 5-0, they've lost 5-0, they've seen a 3-goal lead slip and drawn that game 3-3. They've had mental games at the Kenilworth Road, and on the road they've been okay as well. I'd say decent. I think after last season, Luton did set the bar quite high, and if they're a newly promoted team, you'd say they're overachieving this year, but they're settled in the Championship now. This is their third season, and yeah, I'd say they're doing decent. I think their XG shows that they could be doing better than where the table has them now, but I'd still say it's been a decent start from Luton Town. Next up are Middlesbrough FC, and I'm going to have to go in underachieved. They've really been losing some games you'd think they should be winning with the experience of Neil Warnock there, and he's another manager that could be coming under a lot of pressure. Things just aren't clicking at Middlesbrough. Okay, they've had a couple of decent results. I did watch them play Sheffield United and I thought they were good. On the opening day, they drew at Fulham. I thought they were okay. But they keep losing lots of games. They lost 2-0 to my team, Coventry. They lost 2-0 to Hull City. They lost to Blackpool. And a team that's losing to these newly promoted teams just doesn't look very good. And I think Middlesbrough are underachieving this year. Next up, Millwall Football Club. And I don't know what to say about Millwall. They just keep drawing, don't they? It's funny that they're in the top half with only 3 wins, but they've drawn 6, which is an extra 6 points, obviously. If they could turn those draws into wins, they'll go shooting up the table. Obviously, if they turn the draws into defeats, they go flying down the table. So yeah, a team that draws a lot will find themselves in the middle of the table usually, and you've got to say, decent. I think they look okay. Could do better though. Next up, Nottingham Forest, and it's a difficult one to analyse now because they've started to pick the form up, but overall, you'd still say it's been an underachievement so far, but they're going in the right direction. They are going in the right direction. 3 or 4 games ago, you're looking at shambles when they hadn't won yet. But now Steve Cooper's come in. They are on an upward trajectory, and you've got to say it was the right decision getting Houghton out and Cooper in. And they're going in the right direction. If I do this video again in 5 or 6 games' time, they've probably moved into decent by then. Next up, Preston North End. Tricky team to talk about because their first couple games were bad. I think they lost 3 out of 3, and at the start of the season they were my wild card team to get relegated. I just picked them at random, I don't know why. And then they turned it around, a couple of good results, and then they just keep drawing and obviously lost to QPR. So yeah, very in the middle by Preston. You could say they've underachieved. I'm just going to slip them into decent. It does make this look a little bit more even if I put them in there. I think it's been okay. Once again, a bit like Millwall, a few draws in there, which if they could turn into wins, they go shooting up the table. So yeah, hit and miss with Preston. I'm going to say decent. Next up are Queen's Park Rangers, and you know what? I'm tempted to put them in class, but I won't because there was a bit of expectancy at the start of the season for them to do well. I've heard some people say this before, that you can't really call a team dark horses if everyone's predicting them to do well. So I'm going to put QPR in good. I think they have been good. They're about 5th or 6th at the time of doing this video, and yeah, they could do better. If they climb into the top 3, I'd probably push them into class, but they've dropped a couple of points, and I do expect them to make the top 6 anyway, so I'm going to put them in good. Next up, Reading Football Club, obviously the team that spent most of last year in the playoffs and then fell away to 7th. So far this season, it's been fairly good. Obviously, we don't know what's going on with the points deduction at this point in time. Will they get hit with one? If they do, it's just about surviving. If they don't, could they go for the playoffs this year? Possibly. I'm going to say it's been decent. I think Reading did set quite a high bar last year, so I'm going to slip them in decent for this year. Next up are Stoke City, and I'm actually going to put them in class. That last result against West Bromwich Albion was a massive win, and up until then they've been okay. They did draw a couple of games coming into that one, but that result for me is the one where they've gone, right, we're laying down a marker, we're in it to win it. A bit like Coventry when we beat Fulham. The teams like Coventry and Stoke aren't just there to make up the numbers, they're getting in there, they're getting stuck into these big teams, and I think Stoke have been class so far this season. Next up, West Bromwich Albion, you've got to go with class. Obviously they did lose their unbeaten start to Stoke, but still, their first 10 games they didn't lose, and they're sat 2nd in the table. A good start from West Brom. I think everyone does expect them to be up there, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they do go up automatically this year, just like Bournemouth. Next up are Derby County, and I really don't know what to say for Derby County. We're talking about on the pitch, of course, we're talking about the football side of things, and remember at the start of the season, with the points deduction looking likely and the thin squad, everyone was backing them to get relegated, but on the pitch, they've been much better than anyone would have anticipated. And I was thinking of putting them in decent, but do you know what? No, I'm going to put Derby in good. Remember, guys, I know they're churning out results now and everyone's getting used to that, but at the start of the season, no one could see them getting these results because the squad is thin. They haven't got many players. They did lose a few star players from last season, and yeah, obviously they've been hit with a points deduction. They could still go down, but on the pitch, without the points deduction, they'd be doing very well. So good from Derby County. Next up, Fulham Football Club, and yeah, they've been good. Not quite class though, have they? They haven't been on that level with Bournemouth because they've lost a couple of games, which you think, oh, Fulham shouldn't be losing them. So not quite the consistent levels of top two yet. They're showing playoff level at the moment. Obviously, they should do well. They've got a good squad. Everyone expects them to do well. And at this point in time, they're dropping some silly points. So I'm only going to put Fulham as high as good. Next up are Sheffield United, and easily for me, underachieved. It could have been shambles a couple of games ago, but they did start to turn it around. But then since then, they've lost back-to-back games. So Sheffield United, they are underachieving. I think everyone does know that. The Sheffield United fans will know that. And it's a weird one. Do they want Jukanovic there? Will he do the business? Because he did turn things around, but then they've gone back on a little bit of a losing run. So they need to nip that in the bud. The next 5 or 6 games for Sheffield United are absolutely huge. They really need to play catch up with the top 6 because the expectancy is there. Even if they finish mid-table this season, that is very below where Sheffield United should be. And yeah, they need to get a move on. Next up, Swansea City, and I'm going to go with underachieved. They've shown good glimpses. They haven't quite gone on a bad losing run like Cardiff City have, but they haven't been very consistent at the same time either. They've been a bit hit and miss, Swansea, and they are low in the table considering that they'd finished in the playoffs for the last couple of seasons. They need to get a move on, otherwise they could slip down the table and, well, we'd be looking more at shambles then, wouldn't we? The last team is Peterborough United. Obviously, they've just come up. It's a difficult one. Because they've just come up, I do feel like it's harsh to put them in shambles, but when it comes to conceding goals, they are conceding a lot. And I know they're a newly promoted team, but every time they concede one, it's then followed by a second and a third, and they just keep leaking goals. They conceded 3 against Bristol City in the last game. They obviously conceded 3 in about 7 or 8 minutes against Coventry. And don't get me wrong, they've had a couple of good results. That 0-0 against Bournemouth was good. They picked up 1 or 2 wins, haven't they, which were all right. But I'm going to be harsh, Peterborough fans. I'm going to put you in shambles just because of how many goals you're conceding. I think sort that defence out and Peterborough stay up. So then, guys, that wraps up today's video. Let me know what you think of your own team's start to the season in the comments. Make sure, if you haven't already, that you've left a like on this one. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace out.